Well, I think it's part of the fact that finally business people are at the helm at the moment at this country. Let's face facts. Donald Trump was a business person first, long before he was a politician. And Musk, I think, to me, Musk is the Einstein of business for the 21st century, and just a phenomenally man with such brilliance, and be able to do so many different things. I still can't believe they land that rocket back onto the pad each time.
Yeah.
About what that takes. So I think that's the one reason, and I think also there was a plan to monetize as much of the asset base that they can, because the debt is so huge. And obviously, with gold being valued at the books at $42, it doesn't make any sense to keep it at that level. So I find it interesting. I will say this: when you talked about an audit and even having it live, as long as it's not Geraldo Rivera going to open it up, because the last time he did that, nothing was there, and we don't want to see that nothing is at Fort Knox. Yeah, I think that's coming. I think that's part of it. I don't think what people should do, Jeremy, is confuse what's been transpiring up to a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. The serious purchasing by central banks to a few weeks ago had nothing to do with what's happening. This is a separate issue that's taken transpire. Those banks were buying because they were preparing for what they view as an eventual change in the world monetary system, partly because of what's transpiring with BRICS. And as much as Trump wants to threaten that he's going to break their kneecaps if they continue, I think they will. But this movement is more, I think, related to the U.S. and what it plans on doing with its gold holdings. And therefore, I believe we will get that revaluation. And it makes sense because it does kick in almost $1 trillion of paying down some debt by the higher level of our gold holding. What I don't think is what people should be concerned about, and every once in a while I get an email still about it. Does this mean they're going to sell the gold? I think that's the last choice of theirs, to sell the gold. Look at countries that did and how they're hurting now. Unfortunately, your country, Canada, did it, and I think they would like to have the gold back that they had sold. My opinion is this is just a pause. When I hear, there's a lot of good things Trump has done. One thing you can say about Trump, whether you love him or you hate him, what he says he was going to do, he does. Very few politicians after they're elected, percentage-wise, do as much as he's already done for what he said he was going to do before he was elected. But one of the comments that he's made continuously, that eventually this and other things and a Bitcoin reserve, strategic reserve, will somehow eliminate the debt. The amount of discretionary income we would have to suddenly make as Americans to meet all unnecessary bills and have extra money to pay down $36 trillion is beyond impossibility. That's why the eventual reset in the world and what central banks are doing, recognizing not just our debt. This is not just a U.S. problem. Large-scale national debt is throughout the Western world and even in China. So it goes to us, it at least makes those of us who pounded the table about gold for the last 10 or 20 years proven correct all along for much lower prices, that it would prove to be the number one asset that people would look to as the debt would get worse and worse. I think it's part of this strategic use of gold that Trump plans, but I think it's bigger than that. Now, I must tell you, I've been part of a group for 20 years, and for a lot of those years, a certain person used to call us tinfoil hat folks, because not only did we speak about the manipulation that was going on, which subsequently was proven, but we talked about how much gold has been lent out and lent out multiple times, to the point where if ever that gold was originally called back, it could cause a domino effect. And I believe that's part of it. The good news in all of this, which gold bulls like myself should be well satisfied, is we no longer have the manipulators in the paper market that were basically in London and New York. They're done. They recognize they can no longer just short the paper market and keep it down in the press. Look, even when we have a $30 or $50 down day, years ago, Jeremy, it took weeks, sometimes months to make that up. Now we make it up in hours or a day or two. So the physical demand and the physical gold market now has finally overridden the paper market once and for all. And I think that also is bullish for long-term gold. And the thing that shocks me still is the general financial service industry, at least in the U.S. here, yawns at gold. There's real no interest or holdings yet. And that's why I think the market still has a much further way to go, because we haven't seen the general public involved in the gold market in any major way. No disrespect to what Kitco does and those who are smart enough to be getting people in hundreds of dollars lower, but the vast majority of people in the United States have little or no ownership of gold. Oh, they're sitting it out. We know that. We've seen statistics, the GLD, we've seen even the GDX, GXJs, we saw net selling of that through much of 2024. You can still go, and no offense, but if you do waste your time and turn on one of the financial networks here, you'll fall asleep before you see a mention of gold. So I don't believe there's real ownership, certainly on the retail or significant institution. I think this is a combination of gold coming back to be used in a big way through the government, and people who have been short have some real serious problems here who've used derivatives on the gold market on the short side. And I have to tell you something, I'd be less than honest, Jerry, if I didn't tell you that I somewhat enjoy it after all the years of pain that they caused, that now they're starting to feel a little bit what it feels like to themselves. Well, we already know this, Jeremy. The central banks who have been major buyers have been buying it on that basis. They weren't buying it for a trade. Who are they going to sell it to? Yeah. This accumulation that's been going on for several years outside of North America was going on because they were prepared for recognizing that de-dollarization is here. It's great what Trump says. I do think he's making a mistake, threatening to break people's kneecaps, basically, if you don't deal with us. That's the very reason those groups have formed, because they felt that that's what's been given to them. I believe he created a great marketing card for the BRICS, but nevertheless, I believe they recognize that. Now I think the U.S. has come to that conclusion, and I concur with a lot of good people who are a lot smarter than me over years said that they demonstrated that gold had been lent out 3, 4, 5 times more than we had. And I think this is a shoring up, because let's face it, the people that were doing that was not mom and pops. These were significant financial institutions and players, and they have a huge problem here now if that's the case. Listen, gold's up tremendously in the last couple of years. They haven't had a chance to shore up those shorts in any real manner. And I think this is all coming together, and it'd be described as a near perfect storm for gold. All those people that used to talk about 5,000, 10,000, people's crazy numbers on gold that were crazy when I was buying at 1,300, people couldn't believe we can get to 2,000. But that would be, it would be probably one of the biggest evers, something far worse than the 1929 crash. If the United States, remember, world's largest supposedly holder of gold still, doesn't have it or doesn't have anything as nearly as much as it does. I can't even believe, as much as Trump wants to be forward and all, that somehow they have to not let it get to that view, because it would ruin everything else they're trying to do. But seeing is believing. I mean, if there was ever a chance to have a real audit in my lifetime, this is it right now. Yeah. They're going to remonetize it. He's a smart enough businessman to know why keep an asset on our books that we're only carrying it at $42 when we can carry it at current prices, which would give us room to work and use other means to help pay down the debt, or at least pay down deficits to where, we haven't had a balanced budget since Clinton, and even that was a fudged balanced budget. I always tell people this, Jeremy, if you want to start solving problems, pass the constitutional amendment that you can't spend more than you make. If you and I continued like the government does, we'd be out on the street a long time ago. But by and large, that will help ease some of the near concerns about the debt. But the major concerns that all of us had and spoken about these last several years are still here. In fact, if Trump doesn't do some austerity and stop promising almost everybody isn't going to pay taxes, he could actually make the debt worse than it really was.